Chapter 44-55. Less than long live, there is a strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. Duan Lingtian knew very well that the reason why the leader of the Nayun heavenly army was interested in him, and even wanted to see himself, must have been heard by King Han mentioning this. Except for this, he didn't think he had any place worthy of the Nayun heavenly army leader who wanted to meet. Since the military owner can value me and wants to see me, it is naturally impossible for me not to see it. Although King Han respected himself very much in his words, he seemed to listen to his own opinions, and he wanted to see or not see the leader of the Nayun heavenly army, but Duan Lingtian still planned to see him. Before entering the city of Guilan, he heard Tan Shoting mention the Yangtian army leader many times, and in words, he was very awed by the Yangtian army leader. What's more, in this company's solitary territory, the leader of the Yangtian army is also a top-ranking figure among the top Zeons. In Liangu territory, this Yangtian army master is worthy of any strongest person. Duan Lingtian is also in awe of such an existence. If he can get acquainted with the other party, without touching any interests, there will only be benefits and no harm. Although, with his current strength, he is far from being equal to each other, but having a face-to-face meeting and having a familiar face is not a bad thing. You won't regret seeing him. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, King Han smiled slightly and said, speaking of which, you are also considered destined. The master of the Yangtian army, the law that is good at is also the law of space. He is willing to see you, and there is also the reason that what you are good at is also the law of space. In addition, the mirror image of the floating shadow I gave you was also given to me by him. It was obtained by him in the past. However, he has studied for many years and the mirror image is no longer useful to him. When King Han said that, Duan Lingtian suddenly became more interested in the leader of the Nayun heavenly army. Because the Yangtian army master only wanted to see Duan Lingtian, even if Tan Shoting, the famous Qingyan sword king in the Qianshe realm, wanted to see the Yangtian army master, he could only wait outside. In this regard, he only has envy, not jealousy. Because in his eyes, although Tan Shoting is not bad, compared with his own young master, he is incomparable at all, no matter whether it is talent, strength, or background. Under the leadership of King Han, Duan Lingtian met the leader of Yangtian army. Although the training ground of the Yangtian army master's master is in the military master's mansion, it is a spaceplane of its own. The entrance is in the deepest part of the military master's mansion, and the surrounding formations are dense. If it weren't for the cold king to lead the way, Duan Lingtian felt that you can't get to the entrance at all. Cool. Between darkness and light, Duan Lingtian found that he had come to a world of birds and flowers, and then under the leadership of King Han, he arrived in front of a grassy cottage. To be honest, before meeting the Yangtian army master, Duan Lingtian had imagined the opponent's appearance more than once. Most likely he was a bold middle-aged man, resolute and hearty. Until I saw the Yangtian army leader himself, the contrast brought to him was particularly great. I saw that the leader of the Yangtian army was also a handsome young man, even dressed as a scholar, looking extremely weak, and his hands were not as strong as a chicken. Holding a folding fan, there seemed to be a faint smile on his face at any time, appearing polite. Brother Yu Qingshan, this is the little brother you've been talking about before, right? The leader of Yangtian army glanced at Duan Lingtian, then turned to Han Yuqing, king of cold, and asked with a smile. Good. King Han nodded, looked at Duan Lingtian at the same time, and introduced, Li Feng, this is the leader of Yangtian army, Hu Bugui, who does not return. This was also the first time Duan Lingtian heard of the name of the Yangtian army leader. Junior Li Feng, I have seen the military master. Duan Lingtian hurriedly bowed and saluted Hu Bugui, the leader of the Yangtian army. Regardless of his seniority or strength, the other party was sufficiently qualified to bear his salute. Good. Hu Bugui nodded, then his eyes flashed, and said, Little friend Li Feng, I heard from brother Yu Qingshan that although you are young, you are already close to the invincible high-ranking god. Moreover, not just relying on the power of the law and the power of the blood or the law clone but also the sword. I have a deputy army commander who is also close to the invincible high-ranking god. I asked her to compete with you, but I don't know what you think. After the voice fell, Duan Lingtian didn't wait for Duan Lingtian to speak, as if he was afraid that Duan Lingtian would decline. Hu Bugue continued, "Of course, if I find that your spatial law is lacking in this process, I will also discuss what you lacked afterwards, to mention you. The law of space, although I didn't realize the realm of Dzogchen, but am not far away if I want to come, I still have the right to give you pointers." Hu Bugue said that afterwards, he unfolded the folding fan in his hand and patted it lightly. The military master is willing to give pointers, and the younger generations can't ask for it. It's a great honor. Duan Lingtian said so, as if he also agreed to Hu Bugue. But Hu Bugue heard this and nodded softly. Only a moment later, Duan Lingtian saw that a figure also appeared in this independent space, accompanied by a beautiful voice, "Flying Goose, pay homage to the foster father." Lai Ren is a woman wearing a light red and silver armor. She has a delicate face. Under this outfit, she looks heroic. This is the deputy leader in the mouth of the Yangtian army. Seeing the woman in front of him, Duan Lingtian was a little surprised. In the Yangtian army, there are still women serving as deputy military leaders. Moreover, listening to what the other party calls the leader of the Yangtian army, she is still the righteous daughter of the leader of the Yangtian army. Of course, surprise is surprised. Lingtian is not surprised at this paragraph. Although women are not as good as men by nature, it is not impossible that some strong people will appear among them. Not to mention the existence of the strongest, even if it is the strongest, even the realm of the realm, it is said that there are women in the list. I have seen Senior Han Wang. After greeting Hu Bugue, the leader of Yangtian army, the visitor looked at King Han and greeted him respectfully. "Ha ha." The cold king laughed, "Flying Goose, speaking of you and me, it's hard not to see you, but I didn't expect to meet again. You already have the strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. Before, I didn't hear my brother mentioned the deputy commander of the Yangtian army. I thought he was looking for one of the other two. I didn't expect it to be you. The woman in front of you is known to King Han. The other is the righteous daughter of Yangtian army leader Hu Bugue. She is now close to 20,000 years old. She has a good savvy talent. Although she is a daughter, she is better than thousands of men." However, King Cold didn't know that the opponent now had the strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. Li Feng. After greeting the people, King Han looked at Duan Lingtian again and said with a smile, "In the past, Fei Yan understood the law of space to the realm of small perfection. Now the strength is even further, or the law of space has been improved again, and the distance is great. The realm is not far away, or it's because of her attainments in controlling one, which has improved a lot. Take control. It is also one of the 4 realms of heaven and earth. In fact, Duan Lingtian also mastered this way, but his accomplishments were far inferior to his kendo. If you can discuss with her, the collision between the laws of space should also make you feel." In fact, before King Han mentioned this point, when King Han said that Hu Feiyan understood the law of space to the realm of small perfection, Duan Lingtian had already begun to look forward to discussing with each other. Fighting against a strong person who is good at space laws, and the opponent's knowledge in space laws is deeper than yourself. In this case, it is very common to have some insights in the battle. Of course, how much he can feel depends mainly on his own understanding. If we say that at the beginning, Duan Lingtian was keen to discuss with Hu Bugue's deputy chief only because he wanted to get the guidance of Hu Bugue, the leader of Yangtian army. So, now, even if Hu Bugue didn't give him advice, he wanted to have a good discussion with Hu Feiyan, the deputy commander of the Yangtian army in front of him. Just because the law of space that the other party is good at, and even the way of control, are the methods he is good at, and he has a great opportunity to be inspired by it and improve himself. At this time, Hu Feiyan glanced at Duan Lingtian. His slightly cold face showed a touch of consternation and disbelief. Although it was only a flash, she still showed her contempt for Duan Lingtian. Even the confusion in his eyes persisted for a long time. She can clearly feel that the purple-clothed youth in front of her is very young, and it is even probable that it will not exceed long life. A young man who is less than 10,000 years old, to learn from her. Just now, the foster father said. Is he stronger than mine? Just him. For a while, when Hu Feiyan looked at the Yangtian army leader Hu Bugue again, his face also looked a little unnatural. On the one hand, she doesn't doubt her adoptive father's words. But on the other hand, She didn't think that a young man who was less than 10,000 years old could have the strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. Flying goose. As Hu Feiyan's adoptive father, Hu Bugue obviously also guessed what Hu Feiyan is thinking now. Don't despise little friend Li Feng because he is young. Not without. For example, in the upper 3 realms of the 10,000 realms, there are such enchanting Avilders, and there is not only one person in any one realm. Outside the world, as far as I know, there are no fewer than 5 people who have achieved this. Of course. Little friend Li Feng, not among those I know. Between whose words and words, Duan Lingtian also realized that in this outside world, and even the 10,000 realms, there is no shortage of young powerhouses who are close to the strength of the invincible upper gods. Listen to what this Yangtian army commander said. This place outside the realm, and even the present age of the 10,000 realms, is close to the existence of the invincible high-ranking deity, and I am afraid that there are no less than 10 people. Duan Lingtian secretly said. Of course, he was not surprised. He can get to this point, others may not fail, because there are so many kinds of cultivation resources and cultivation environment that he has enjoyed in life, which he simply can't imagine. Chapter 44-56. Certainly. Duan Lingtian knew very well in his heart that he can have today and he can get to this point. Although there is no shortage of hard work and diligence, a large part of it is really a lot of opportunities along the way. If not, he would not be able to catch up with the outside world, and even the top talents of the 10,000 worlds, let alone surpass them. Nowadays, most people, including the 2 Xeons in front of them, only know that he is less than 10,000 years old, and most likely think that he is 8 or 9,000 years old. They didn't know that he was only about 2,000 years old now. If you know, you can imagine how shocked they would be. Even in places outside the realm, even in the 10,000 realms, the top genius, at the age of 2,000 years, let alone Duan Lingtian's achievements, even if it wants to become a general high-ranking god, it is almost impossible. After listening to the words of adoptive father Hu Bugue, Hu Feiyan, who was obviously a bit contemptuous of Duan Lingtian, suddenly became awe-inspiring, and his handsome face seemed a bit serious at this moment. Since the foster father has said so, then I will discuss with this little brother, please. Hu Feiyan took the lead to rise from the sky, and soon reached the high altitude, and at the same time invited Duan Lingtian. Please. Duan Lingtian didn't talk nonsense, and followed Yakong, preparing to discuss with the female powerhouse in front of him. According to Hu Bugue, the leader of the Yangtian army, Hu Feiyan's current strength is also close to the invincible high-ranking god. Moreover, this is a strong man who is good at the laws of space and has mastered one of the 4 ways of heaven and earth at the same time. Even if it is Duan Lingtian, although it looks calm on the surface, deep in his heart, he still can't help but feel a little excited. That was the excitement of seeing Lai Xinshi. He knew that Hu Feiyan's strength was definitely not comparable to that of the elders of the Wang family who he had fought against in the Wang family of Langxiaocheng, because Hu Feiyan was good at one of the 4 supreme laws of space. If it were him in the past, in front of Hu Feiyan, there is a high probability that even a tie would be difficult to achieve. And now, his strength is better than when he fought against the elders of the Wang family. It is not impossible to fight against Hu Feiyan. As for defeating Hu Feiyan, he is not sure. I also feel that it is almost impossible. Unless, Hu Feiyan, the leader of the Yangtian army, exaggerated Hu Feiyan's strength in his words. Otherwise, Duan Lingtian feels that he has no possibility of defeating the other party, and the probability is that he will fight with him at most. Of course, the premise is that he didn't use the power of the small world life tree and the 5 elements of the gods in his body, but used their power to find an opportunity to burst out. Duan Lingtian asked himself that he was still confident of defeating the other party. However, it is not necessary. Not to mention that the other 4 spirits of the 5 elements gods, except for the Jingsha Shinshui, are still in the dormant recovery process, which is the god tree of life, and their current state is not very good. In the past, the consumption of the tree of life was still too great. Although it recovers faster than the other 4 spirits of the 5 elements gods, but the recovery to the present, compared with the heyday, it can only be regarded as a recovery of 30 to 40%. It is okay to help him, but the help that can be provided is limited. Maybe the tree of life and the asterisk 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 of water at the same time can help him defeat Hu Feiyan. But whether it is the tree of life or the asterisk 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 of water, it will inevitably fall asleep again. For a competition, it is not necessary and not worth it. Unless there is no other way around life and death, Duan Lingtian can use the power of both. I, Hu Feiyan, have practiced for more than 10,000 years, and have never been defeated by someone younger than me. Even someone younger than me, even like me, what I meet can survive under my hands. There are none of the 10 tricks. When Duan Lingtian stood up from the sky and stood facing Hu Feiyan spoke again with a bold voice and a bit of arrogance. And this is also Hu Feiyan's pride. She, Hu Feiyan, was invincible of her peers in the past. Moreover, it is to leave their peers far behind, leaving them beyond the reach. When Duan Lingtian heard Hu Feiyan's words, he smiled faintly. Not to mention the 10,000 realms, it is the land outside the realm, so how big? You, Deputy Army Master, have you been to every corner of the land outside the realm, challenged every strong peer? Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Hu Feiyan frowned slightly. That's not, but I have been to the surrounding areas of loneliness. People of the same generation didn't recognize my opponents, or even heard of anyone at my age. With my strength. Like the surrounding area? Duan Lingtian's face still smiled. So, Deputy Army Master, you have not even been to the 3 holy realms? Outside the world, if there is a Deputy Army Master your age, or even younger, your strength will be limited. The existences close to the invincible high-ranking gods are probably all gathered in those 3 holy realms. The 3 holy realms. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Hu Feiyan subconsciously glanced at one of the 2 figures rising from the sky. It was her adoptive father, the princess of Yangtian army, Hu Bugui. In the past, her adoptive father Hu Bugui had never taken her to the 3 holy realms. Even her adoptive father seemed not to like to mention the 3 holy realms, and even the people in the heavenly army mentioned the 3 holy realms deliberately to avoid her adoptive father. Because of this, subconsciously, she who respects her foster father very much, has no good feelings about the 3 holy realms, and she didn't even bother to go there before. Of course, she had no good feelings and no good feelings. She had heard about the 3 Saint Realm powerhouses, and she knew that she should be able to find her age and strength not weaker than her existence. Her strength went even further. After approaching the invincible high-ranking god, she had more than one thought of going to the 3 holy realms. She has always wanted to talk to her adoptive father about this matter, but she still couldn't open her mouth. Because of this, Hu Feiyan couldn't help looking at his adoptive father for the first time when he heard the purple-clothed youth unscrupulously mentioning the 3 sacred realms in front of him. Because, in her opinion, this is a very sensitive topic in front of her adoptive father. Originally, she thought that her adoptive father, even if it was because the visitor was a guest, would not have an episode, but it would be slightly discolored. But to her surprise, this time, her adoptive father did not change anything. It was as if he hadn't heard the words of the youth in purple. At this time, he seemed to have noticed Hu Feiyan's gaze. Han Yuqing, the king of Han, looked at Hu Bugui, the leader of the Yangtian army beside him, and asked through the voice transmission, "This girl, Feiyan, hasn't been to the 3 holy realms yet?" Hu Bugui responded, "In the old days, she went to the 3 holy realms, and she didn't have the strength to protect herself. But now, if she wants to go further and become an invincible high-ranking god, she is afraid that she will have to go to the 3 holy realms. Territory. And I also plan to let her go to the 3 holy realms during this period of time." Hu Bugui said. "Then you." Han Yuqing seemed to be worried while speaking, but stopped speaking before finishing speaking. And Hu Bugui, obviously guessing what Han Yuqing wanted to say, his eyes froze, and he said coldly, "Those people, if they are honest and don't aim at Feiyan, it would be fine. If you dare to target it, it's no wonder that I didn't keep the promise I made to never enter the 3 holy realms again." Chapter 44-57. In the field, Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan faced each other for more than a dozen breaths. The original calm was finally broken when Hu Feiyan spoke. After 3 breaths, "I'm going to shoot." Hu Feiyan spoke, his body shocked and he was ready to go. The reason why he said he would take action after 3 breaths was obviously also a time for Duan Lingtian to prepare, and he was obviously unwilling to take advantage of Duan Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he felt a little more fond of Hu Feiyan, and said with a slight smile, "Deputy Army Master, please." When the voice fell, the smile on his face also instantly converged and became a lot more serious. At the same time, in his body, the divine power was also turbulent, and at the same time the power of the law of space also appeared, and the divine power merged together, causing the surrounding space to tremble. At this moment, Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan stood volley in 2 directions. The space around their bodies was turbulent and ups and downs, like 2 spatial vortices, surrounding them. However, compared to Duan Lingtian's momentum, Hu Feiyan's momentum is obviously more exaggerated. After all, Hu Feiyan's laws of space have been enlightened by her to the realm of small perfection, and Duan Lingtian's law of space is only close to the realm of small perfection. Soon, Hu Feiyan moved. Her figure was ethereal, as if she had been shocked. A compass that looked somewhat similar to the formation in her hand appeared, and a terrifying aura spread from it. This breath swept through, and it is not difficult for people to sense that this is a strong artifact. Although Hu Feiyan didn't think that young people who were less than 10,000 years old could be better than herself, or even catch up with herself. But her foster father and King Han respected each other like that, so she didn't dare to have any contempt. Therefore, a shot is almost unreserved except for the power of not stimulating the blood. The way of control is like a shadow. Hu Feiyan at this moment is like a space messenger. Wherever he goes, the space is controlled by her. So strong. And Duan Lingtian, facing the menacing Hu Feiyan, his face became extremely solemn, and from the glance in front of him, it is not difficult to see that the existence of the same close to invincible high-ranking gods is also very different. For example, the Grand Elder of Lan Xiaocheng Wang's family who fought him, if he fights with Hu Feiyan, he may not be able to draw with Hu Feiyan, he will be defeated with a high probability. Of course, if Hu Feiyan wants to defeat the opponent, it is not that easy, and at best it will win by a narrow margin. But even if it is a narrow win, it is a win. A tie with a narrow win, it looks only a bit short, but in fact it is a world of difference. Being able to narrowly defeat the opponent also means having a chance to kill the opponent. This slight difference is the difference between life and death. Call out. Duan Lingtian didn't dare to neglect. The 7 orifice exquisite swords whizzed out, the law of space swept out, and the swordsmanship blended into it perfectly, and the sword came out, as if it could make everything around him desolate. This sword swept out, facing the powerful Hu Feiyan. He did not lose sight of it. Before the forces of Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan were about to collide, Hu Buguei, the commander of the Nayan Heavenly Army, had his eyes brightened, and he was a little surprised. "I heard what you said earlier, although I believe it, but I still have some doubts deep in my heart." Seeing this now, this little brother named Li Feng is really surprising. It's the first time I've seen this in my life. Under the realm of superior realm, I can comprehend kendo to this level. With the spatial laws that have not yet stepped into the realm of small perfection, and with his swordsmanship, he can have the strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. His law of space, if you go further and step into the realm of small perfection, under the invincible upper Protoss, I am afraid it will be difficult to find his opponent. Hu Buguei exclaimed again and again, his eyes were also shining brightly. The purple-clothed youth in front of him surprised him too much. In the next instant, the confrontation between Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan also officially began. Call out. Boom. The sky is full of sword energy, sweeping from the other side, as if the power that can control the space collides, causing the void to continue to have spatial ripples. It is also this space that is supported by the strongest. If it were changed to the 10,000 realms, there would have been a lot of space cracks around this time. The two are close to the strength of the invincible upper gods. Once they collide, although the space cannot be collapsed, it is not difficult to tear out some space cracks. Even the space outside the realm is much more stable than the general place of the 10,000 realms. Under the realm of Jiezun, I have seen a person whose swordsmanship is not weaker than him. It's a pity that that person has become an invincible high-ranking god, and in the end he failed to become the strongest, and he was wiped out by time. Seeing the scene in front of him, Han Yuqing was also surprised. Although he had known Duan Lingshan's strength a long time ago, he couldn't help but feel moved when he saw Duan Lingtian really make a move. Based on his attainments in kendo, as long as the law of space steps into the realm of small perfection, and then promotes to the strong. His strength, I am afraid that he will not be below us, Hu Bugue said with emotion. When the words fell, he seemed to have thought of something suddenly, and couldn't help but frown slightly. Brother Yuqing, your little brother, so enchanting, I am afraid that there will be an impact on the heart of the invincible high-ranking god. In my opinion, if you have a chance, you should dissuade him for a while. If you become an invincible high-ranking god, and you want to become the strongest again, it will be hard to reach the sky. In the land outside the realm, and even in the history of the 10,000 realms, it is less than long-lived to approach the existence of the invincible high-ranking deity, and it is not uncommon for them to become the invincible high-ranking deity, and among these people, only a very small number of people have achieved this. The strongest. When talking about this, while Hu Bugue shook his head, his eyes were a little bit more envious. Invincible high-ranking gods, if they can become the strongest, they are directly close to the realm of the realm. If you have not low attainments in the 4 realms of heaven and earth, it won't take long for you to have the combat power of a strong realm. In my opinion, you are worrying too much about it, brother. King Han smiled slightly and looked at the 2 evenly matched figures in the field, and said without hurries, you think that there is such an evil spirit. In this respect, I still need to persuade and I will give advice. With his attainments in kendo, if he can comprehend the laws of space to the realm of great perfection, and become an invincible high-ranking god and then break through and become the strongest, I am afraid that it will directly be the existence of the realm, the existence of world respect. At this moment, King Han couldn't help but his eyes became hot, because even if he looked beyond the horizon, even the 10,000 realms, there were only a few dozen people in the known realm of the realm. Even if there are some strong people in the hidden world, it is absolutely impossible to add up to more than 50 people. You must know that there are no more than 50 people, including places outside the realm, and even the 10,000 realms. Those who are strong in the realm of the realm are placed outside the realm, and even in the 10,000 realms, are all powerful, and can easily kill the most powerful in a single thought. Regardless of his and Hu Buge's strengths, if they encounter a realm-level powerhouse, they can easily kill both of them with one enemy, even if they are killed by a realm-level powerhouse. Staring at it, there is no chance of even running away. Realm strong, too strong, that's also. Hearing the words of Han Yuqing, King of Cold, Hu Bugue, the leader of Yangtian army, nodded suddenly. Such a genius must have his own ideas. Moreover, I think, he will definitely choose the path of becoming an invincible high-ranking god. After all, he is too young. At this time, Hu Bugue also figured it out. He was thinking about the other party from his own point of view just now, putting himself in the position, if he is the other party, with such enchanting talent and understanding, even if he has the opportunity to become the strongest, he will definitely not will rashly accomplish. Once promoted to the strong with the strength of the invincible high-ranking god, that is the realm of the realm, they are both the strongest and the realm-respected powerhouses, they are the existence that the strongest people need to look up to. Even if he can easily kill 2 or 3 of the lowest level of the strongest team, he needs to look up and dare not provoke him in the face of the realm-level powerhouse. They fought against each other with more than 100 moves, and neither side was left behind. Looking at Fei Yin's posture, I think it won't take long to use her blood. Suddenly, Han Yuqing's eyes flashed abruptly as he watched the confrontation between the 2 in the court, and then said his own judgment. But Hu Bugue took a look at the scene, then nodded, and sighed lightly. Although Fei Yan is older than the opponent, it is far inferior to the opponent in terms of calmness. She, after all, can't hold her breath. Speaking of later, Hu Bugue lightly shook his head. Actually, this is normal. Han Yuqing smiled and said, in fact, in terms of the methods they currently show, Fei Yan is actually better. However, the opponent's combat experience is obviously better than Fei Yan. It's really hard to imagine how a young man who is less than 10,000 years old can accumulate such an amazing combat experience. Duan Lingshan's combat experience in the confrontation with Hu Fei Yan surprised him. This is definitely not inferior to any existence under the strongest he has ever seen. Yeah. Normally, Even if Fei Yan can't beat him, he can still suppress him a little. But now, there is no difference between the winner and the loser. Fei Yang is anxious now, obviously because of this. However, once Fei Yan uses the power of blood, the opponent will probably use the power of blood, or the law clone. Hu Bugue said, I don't know whether this little guy's bloodline power or law clone can match, or even surpass, Fei Yan's bloodline power. As Hu Buge's voice fell, Hu Fei Yan in the field suddenly burst into blood, and his long hair broke free from the shackles and rose with the wind. After that, a hair that was originally black and long and straight was twisted into a big wave in an instant, and it seemed to be dyed red, gorgeous and dazzling. At this moment, Hu Fei Yan's blood was shocking, and his delicate and beautiful face also became a lot colder at this moment, as if he was transformed. End of this chapter. Chapter 44-58. Hu Fei Yan's transformation is definitely not just a change in appearance and temperament. The turbulent power in her body seems to be perfectly integrated with the power of blood, and it has been greatly strengthened. At this moment, Duan Lingtian even had an illusion. This Hu Fei Yan no longer looked like a human being, but more like a terrifying bloodthirsty great monster, with killing intent in his eyes, and a terrible cold and bloodthirsty meaning from all over his body. Boom! At this moment, the strongest artifact in Hu Fei Yan's hand flicked, and a more powerful space storm began to unfold in this solid space, and the space cracks were torn apart even more, swaying turbulently in the void, hideous and terrifying. What a powerful bloodline! In the past, Duan Lingtian hadn't seen anyone use the power of blood. Even in Wuyang City, he also felt the power of the blood of Wuyang City's 5 strongest people. However, because they couldn't see their shots clearly, there was only a faintly terrifying aura of feeling the power of the opponent's bloodline, and there was not much specific feeling. But now, the power of Hu Fei Yan's bloodline gave him a feeling that was more terrifying than that of the elder Wang family Taishang in Lan Xiaocheng. What does this mean? It means that the blood of Hu Fei Yan is stronger than that of the Wang family. You know, although there is no Xion in the Wang family, the Xion was born anyway, and the family of the Xion was often born. After the Xion, the blood of the descendants will become stronger. Perhaps, it's because Wang Jingrao, the Supreme Elder, is not a direct descendant of the strongest person, so the power of blood has not been strengthened. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could only guess like this. Of course, he is not allowed to think too much. Now he, facing the menacing Hu Fei Yan, hurriedly called out his own space law clone, Call. In an instant, another Duan Lingtian appeared in the field, but the eyes of this Duan Lingtian did not contain any luster, which seemed a little dull, and there was no anger. But, even so, he shot. The strength is not much worse than the deity. For a period of time, Lingtian's deity and law clones shot together, and they were actually tied with Hu Fei Yan, and it was difficult to distinguish between up and down. And this also made Duan Lingtian feel surprised and pleasantly surprised. The improvement of his space law during this time has also made the space law clone's strength stronger, beyond his expectation, as if it had undergone a major transformation. Of course, he also felt that this time the promotion of the space law clone was not only dependent on the space law, but was also related to the final consolidation of the divine power of his upper gods. This battle lasted for hundreds of moves, and finally, as the Yangtian army commander Hu Bugue spoke, Duan Lingtian and Hu Fei Yan just gave up. And Hu Fei Yan, looking at Duan Lingtian again at this time, was also full of jealousy. Through this battle, she also personally felt the horror of this young man who is less than 10,000 years old. She, so far, is the first time she has encountered such a talented Evildor. For a moment, the original pride in my heart disappeared. Original. In this world, there is indeed a more enchanting existence than her. I heard that it was completely different from what I saw with my own eyes. Even if her adoptive father told him that there are many geniuses in the outside world, she also heard about the existence of some of those geniuses from other channels, but she didn't feel much. I feel that most of the rumors are processed and modified, and they are not entirely true. Just like herself. Even in the surrounding area of Lian Lonely Realm, she heard it more than once, saying that Hu Fei Yan was less than 10,000 years old, so she had the strength close to the invincible high-ranking god. At that time, she was not only past long live, but also not even close to the strength of the invincible high-ranking god. Therefore, she felt that those rumors, like this one, were probably fake. I'm not as good as him. Although it seemed that the battle with Du and Lingtian had become a tie, Hu Feiyan's heart was still full of loss. In her opinion, although she was comparable to the opponent in strength, she was much older than the opponent. If she waits until the opponent is her own age, she will most likely not be the opponent. The strength of the deputy army master is surprising. I have also fought against other beings close to the invincible high-ranking gods in the past, but the opponent is not as good as the deputy army master. Seeing the loss in Hu Feiyan's eyes, Du and Lingtian spoke and complimented the other party. At the same time, he secretly slandered in his heart. It seemed that this female deputy commander of Yangtian army was also a very good and strong person. Ha ha. At this time, Han Yuqing, the cold king, laughed. Little friend Li Feng, your strength is obviously stronger than what you saw in the past, which is really surprising. I thought that even if you could get a tie with the current Fei Yan, at best you would barely deal with it, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. As Han Yuqing's voice fell, Hu Buguei also glanced at Du and Lingtian with admiration, then looked at Hu Feiyan and sighed softly. Girl, now you know the gap between you and the real genius, right? Hu Feiyan returned to his senses, smiled bitterly, and his eyes became a little lonely. She has always regarded herself as the pride of her foster father, and she has always felt that she has done it. But today's battle made her realize that if she wants to be the pride of her foster father, what she has done now is far from enough. She needs to work harder. All of a sudden, the eyes of the youngest deputy commander of the Yangtian army also became firmer and sharper than ever before. However, this firmness and sharpness did not last for long, and it turned into stunned and shocked, even unbelievable and incredible. And these changes are completely derived from the next words of Hu Buguei, the leader of Yangtian army. This time the Han King will go to Pingxiong realm with little friend Li Feng, so you can walk with them. If you plan to go to the 3 holy realms, you can also go with them. If they don't plan to go to the 3 holy realms, you can go to the 3 holy realms to experience on your own. In a word, Hu Feiyan was shocked, and when he looked at his foster father Hu Buguei again, he seemed to be looking at a stranger. This, or her adoptive father who seems to be full of opinions about the 3 holy realms. At this moment, she even wondered if her adoptive father was taken away. Is this still her foster father? Foster father Yu. When Hu Feiyan looked at her foster father Hu Buguei again, her eyes were completely wrong. And Hu Buguei naturally guessed what the righteous woman was thinking, and said lightly, in the past, I didn't mention the 3 holy realms, but I didn't want you to set foot there too early. But now, with your strength, even if you enter the 3 holy realms, the environment has enough self-protection. In addition, on your trip, your father will give you 3 drops of spiritual essence and blood. The quantity is limited, and it is best to use it at the most critical moment. In the latter sentence, Hu Buguei said to Hu Feiyan through voice transmission. Neither Du and Lingtian nor Han Wang heard this. Otherwise, King Han would be okay. Du and Lingtian would definitely lament the masterpiece of Hu Buguei, the commander of the Yangtian army, brother Yu Qingxian. Hu Buguei looked at King Han again, smiled and said, on the way to Pingxiong realm, you can introduce the 3 holy realms to this girl. I won't be too nonsense. Good. King Han responded, then looked at Hu Feiyan again, smiled and said, I was planning to take little friend Li Feng to see your foster father, and then leave Guilan City. If you have anything to prepare, we can wait for you. Senior King Han, I have nothing to prepare. In the depths of Hu Feiyan's eyes, with deep desire and expectation, she made no secret of her yearning for the 3 holy realms. That's all. Du and Lingtian left Liangu realm and headed to the 3 holy realms. In addition to Tan Xiuteng who was already with him, there were 2 more people who accompanied him. Han Wang Han Yuqing. Hu Feiyan, deputy chief of Yangtian army. In the face of these 2 big figures, Tan Xiuteng also didn't dare to take a breath. They were all existences he couldn't afford. At this time, he was also a little sad. Tan Xiuteng, at any rate, is also the famous Blue Flame Sword King in the Sky Sand realm, but now he seems to be a follower of these 3, running errands. Chapter 4459. Du and Lingtian and his party of 4 got on Hu Feiyan's magical spacecraft, left Liangu realm, and headed to Pingxiong realm. Because Hu Feiyan is the deputy commander of Yangtian army, her divine weapon spacecraft is no stranger to the land bordering Liangu and Hexiong. No one stepped forward to provoke it, and it was extremely peaceful. And it was precisely for this reason that he chose to sit on Hu Feiyan's artifact spacecraft at the beginning. On the divine weapon spacecraft, although Hu Feiyan didn't talk much, she couldn't help but ask Duan Lingtian a few words from time to time. The words revealed her curiosity about Duan Lingtian. And when he knew that Duan Lingtian was from the 10,000 realms, he was also a little surprised. At the same time, like Tan Xiuting, he thought Duan Lingtian was from the upper 3 realms. Duan Lingtian did not deny this, nor did he reveal his true origins. He even informed Tan Xiuting in advance that without his permission, his real name could not be revealed. This way he was accompanied by Hu Feiyan and Han Wang, and he was called Li Feng instead of Duan Lingtian. Tan Xiuting is now limited by the Sky Blood Oath, so naturally it is impossible to disobey Duan Lingtian. However, he was puzzled in his heart, wondering why his young master didn't show his true identity. It is impossible for Tan Xiuting to dream that the reason why his young master is so cautious is entirely because he comes from the gods against the gods, and he has obtained a lot of gods and fountains in the gods against the god. Shun Yunquan, that is a treasure that can make the most powerful fight for it. If people know that it is in Duan Lingtian's hands, Duan Lingtian will definitely be targeted. Although Tan Ziyuteng's strength was good and he was well known in Tiansha, almost no one knew him when he was out of Tiansha. With Tan Ziyuteng's status in a place outside the realm, he can't reach the top people, so it is naturally impossible to hear about the news about Duan Lingtian, a talented cultivator against the gods who has obtained a large number of gods. Because of this, Duan Lingtian didn't hide his true identity before Tan Xiuting. Because, in his opinion, even if Tan Xiuting is by his side, he may not be able to reach the level of existence of the Xion, but he did not expect that he would be in contact with the Xion so quickly. The Cold King. Inside the divine weapon spacecraft, Duan Lingtian's gaze swept over Han Yuqing, the Cold King who was sitting not far away, closing his eyes and meditating, and his heart was full of jealousy. Although he has been in the Tiansha realm and Liangu realm for a while, he may still have heard the news about my being with a spiritual fountain. If I reveal my identity, I will be very dangerous. Fortunately, Tan Xiuting made the blood oath in the sky. Before Tan Ziyuteng's sky blood oath expires, I am still safe for the time being. However, I still have to change my dress occasionally. Otherwise, wearing a purple dress from beginning to end is also an obvious feature. Duan Lingtian secretly said. In Duan Lingtian's expectation, if he wants to get in touch with the strongest, at least he has to wait for him to become the invincible high-ranking god, or become the strongest. And at that time, he didn't worry that there was a lot of news about the gods in his hands being exposed. After all, the plan cannot keep up with the changes. On the other hand, Tan Xiuting, who received Duan Lingtian's warning, also faintly felt that something was wrong. Master, he won't let me reveal his real name. Is it possible that the strong or forces behind him, and the king of Han or the army of the Nayan heavenly army? Is there a contradiction in the Lord? He can only think like this. It is impossible to think of his young master carrying the treasure that the most powerful would want. After entering the Pingxiong realm for a period of time, Han Yuqing, the king of cold, opened his eyes and saw that Duan Lingtian hadn't practiced, so he took the initiative to chat with Duan Lingtian and chatted. During this process, Han Yuqing asked Duan Lingtian about his experience after leaving Wuyang City, and Duan Lingtian also informed Han Yuqing of a series of things about his later going to Wang's house in Langxiaocheng. Of course, he concealed many things. For example, he went to Wang's house in Langxiaocheng to marry Wang Luoyu in order to fulfill his promise. On Han Yuqing's side, he also said that he was in love with Wang Luoyu, and that was what happened later. Sure enough, it's the hero who saddens the beauty pass. I really envy you, little friend Li Feng, and you have such passion and blood. Han Yuqing sighed. It's also. Little friend Li Feng is not long-lived now, and I, who was less than long-lived before, are not full of passion and passion. When the voice fell, Han Yuqing's eyes were a little bit nostalgic, as if he was thinking of his absurd years. He, once ridden with beauty, owed a lot of romantic debts. Until later, as the years passed, The former beauty turned into dead bones, and he suffered so much parting that he didn't go to the flowers and the grass anymore. However, for the heaven-changing sword in the sand realm that day, this time I got your guidance from little friend Li Feng. In the next period of time, I am afraid that the sword will be advancing by leaps and bounds. Perhaps, it won't take long for me to dare not pretend to defeat him. Although Han Yuqing didn't know or meet the person of Chengtianjian Sichu Lei, he had heard of it. After all, when he was in the Tiansha realm, he also had an intersection with some of the strongest. Among them, the chiming demon venerable of the Chiming Mountain existed in the Tiansha realm as famous as the heavenly sword Sichu Lei. He heard that the demon venerable Kai Ming mentioned the Sichu Lei of the Chengtian sword, and he also knew that the demon venerable Kai Ming had discussed with the Sichu Lei of the Chengtian sword in the past, regardless of the outcome. It's a pity that I'm not good at kendo, or else I can get some inspiration from your little friend Li Feng. Speaking of later, in King Han's eyes, there was no lack of envy for the heavenly sword Sichu Lei. At their level of strength, it is extremely difficult to go further. It's not that no one can provide him with the kind of help that the person in front of him has to the heavenly sword Sichu Lei, but the people who can provide this kind of help to him are almost all powerhouses above the realm. No matter how bad it is also a strong person who is not weaker than him. It is not so easy to get these powerful people to provide him with these help. Even if the other party is willing, he still needs to pay a lot of price. Moreover, in the process, if the other party has any bad thoughts, he is very likely will be self-defeating. If there is an existence weaker than him and can provide this kind of help to him, he will be more relieved, and standing on the strong side, many things will take the initiative. Therefore, he admired Sichu Lei from the bottom of his heart. Senior King Han praised. Duan Lingtian repeatedly said, the control of the Cold King is not much weaker than the junior's sword. Speaking of this, as if thinking of something, Duan Lingtian glanced at the shadows who were sitting cross-legged with their backs to them not far away. The deputy commander of Yangtian Army Hu Feiyan said, Senior King Han, I played against Deputy Commander Hu before. I feel that the way she has exercised control gives me a somewhat familiar feeling. Now, recalling your shots in Wuyang City, Senior Han Wang, although I only saw Senior's initial shots, I can still find some similarities between your control method and Vice Army Master Hu's control method. Duan Lingtian said that afterwards, he looked at Han Yuqing again, and he was a little more confused. But Han Yuqing couldn't help but smile. Li Feng's friendly eyesight. Feiyan's control method, the prototype of Feiyan's control, was her own understanding. Later, I officially mastered the control method, and I was the one who led me to get started. I see. Duan Lingtian suddenly realized that if this is the case, everything can be explained. Han Yuqing is the half-teacher who Hu Feiyan controls. After the topic was over, Han Yuqing spoke again and talked to Duan Lingtian about the descendants of his old friend who was also the strongest. A genius who is less than long-lived and has understood the law of death to the realm of small perfection, and his strength is not much worse than that of Hu Feiyan before the breakthrough in the past. Although he is slightly inferior to Hu Feiyan, he is not as old as Hu Feiyan. He has always felt that if he is the same age as Hu Feiyan, he is definitely better than Hu Feiyan. Now that Feiyan has broken through, even if he defeats him again, he probably won't take it to heart. Only if you are the same age as him, and have the genius to crush him, can he completely put away his complacency. Han Yuqing was talking to Duan Lingtian here, and Tan Xiuteng, who also heard his words, couldn't help but a touch of pity appeared in his eyes. Pity for Han Yuqing's old friend and younger generation. That kid, it's going to be unlucky. At the beginning, Tan Xiuteng was still curious that the strongest being able to befriend Han Yuqing is definitely not an ordinary strongest, it must be a well-known existence in Pingxiong. He has heard of the top Xions in Pyongxiong. And when he next learned who the strongest was from the King of Cold, he couldn't help being shocked. It turned out to be him. Chapter 4460. In Pingxiong, the strong are like clouds, and there are many extremely powerful ones. Pingxiong realm is already a region close to the three holy realms, and the top strongest here is even better than the Liangu realm, which is better than the heavenly sand realm. For example, in Liangu territory, the leader of Yangtian Army Hu Bugue, one of the top strongest people in Liangu territory, can hardly find anyone with local strength that can surpass him in Liangu territory. But in the Pingxiong realm, he can find no less than 3 strong people who can surpass him on the bright side. Tan Shouteng also heard of the strongest people in the Pingxiong realm. Although the strongest person mentioned by Han Yuqing, is not the strongest in Pingxiong territory, he is still able to enter the second echelon, and his strength is definitely not weaker than that of Han King and Naiyun, Lord of the Celestial Army. The most important is, this one is not only strong in his own right, but also ranked among the best in the second echelon of the Pingxiong realm. He also has a master who is one of the 3 top Zeons in the Pingxiong realm. An existence that is said to be extremely close to the realm of Jiezun is known as the existence of half-step Jiezun. There is a saying widely circulated in places outside the realm, and even in the 10,000 realms, Jiezun is not out of the realm, half-step Jiezun is respected. Tan Shouteng originally thought that the old friend of Han Yuqing, the Cold King, was at most a relatively ordinary existence among the Zeons of the second echelon of the Pingxiong realm, because the Zeons of the Pingxiong realm were too strong. Even the Zeon of the third echelon, placed in a border area like the Qianshou realm, is enough to be recognized as the top Zeon of the Qianshou realm, such as the top strongest in the Heavenly Sand realm, the demon sovereign of the flying underworld, and the heavenly sword Situ Lei, placed in the Pingxiong realm. They can barely enter the third echelon at most. Unexpectedly, the old friend of Han Yuqing, the Cold King, turned out to be the top one in the second echelon of the Pingxiong realm Zeon. Not only the top strength, but also the top background. Master. At the same time, Tan Shouteng also began to explain Duan Lingtian's confusion, and told Duan Lingtian, Han Yuqing's old friend of the extraordinary. This also shocked Duan Lingtian. Unexpectedly, you, a person of the Heavenly Sand realm, are so precious to the strongest of Pingxiong realm. Han Yuqing, the Cold King, was a little surprised when he heard what Tan Shouteng said to Duan Lingtian. Obviously, he didn't expect Duan Lingtian's entourage to have such insights. Tan Shouteng suddenly smiled bitterly when he heard the words, Lord Han, the reputation of Lord Withered Wood is too surpassing. His father, placed in a place outside the realm, is the closest to the existence of a powerful Jiezun realm. Anyone who is concerned about this aspect can hardly not know him. The strongest of the second echelon of Pingxiong. You may not know others, but it is hard not to know Deadwood. Furthermore, back then, Lord Withered Wood had not been promoted to the second echelon. He was chased back to the Pingxiong realm because he had offended a strong one of the 3 holy realms. At that time, many people thought that Lord Withered Wood would die. At the critical moment, Master Yuanhe made a move and directly killed the strongest who could enter the second echelon in Pingxiong realm. It was also at that time that people in the Pingxiong realm, and even people outside the realm, learned that the strongest Deadwood in the third echelon of Pingxiong turned out to be the son of Master Yuanhe. This incident, back then, was spread out in places outside the realm. Although, I was just a young man who hadn't even entered the realm of the gods at that time, but I was fortunate to hear about it. After Tan Ziyuteng's remarks, Duan Lingtian also learned a lot of useful information. The father of King Han's old friend Withered Wood, one of the top 3 strongest people in the Pingxiong realm, and a half-step realm master named Yuanhe. Of course, it may be just a title, not a real name. Even Withered Wood, it may be just a title. Like the title of King of Cold. That's a coincidence. Han Yuqing smiled faintly. When I heard about this back then, I hadn't stepped into the realm of gods. With a word from Han Yuqing, Tan Shouteng suddenly closed himself. You know, at that time, although he hadn't stepped into the realm of the gods, he was also a high-ranking ***** emperor, not far from the realm of the gods. In other words, at that time, Han Yuqing, the Cold King in front of him, might not be as strong as him. And today, many years later, the opponent has not only become the Zeon, but he is also not an ordinary Zeon. It can be recognized as the top Zeon in Liangu, and can enter the second echelon in Pingxiong. The strongest. As Tan Shouteng smiled bitterly and didn't know how to answer the conversation, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but think of the favor Han Yuqing had asked for his help this time. There are elders like Deadwood, and there is also a half-step world sage like Yuanhe on it. Can the young man who asked Han Yuqing, the Cold King, to point himself, not be arrogant. Moreover, it is conceivable that there are two great figures in the back, and the resources that each other can enjoy since childhood is absolutely unimaginable for ordinary people. At the same time, Duan Lingtian took a look at Hu Feiyan, but saw that the other party didn't say a word during the whole process, nor did he show any surprise. Obviously, the other party already knew the destination of their trip, and also knew the existence of the two strongest men, Deadwood and Yuan He. Duan Lingtian, Hu Feiyan and Tan Shouting, under the leadership of Han Yuqing, the Han King, came to an ice field in Pingxiong. This ice field looks extremely vast, and after further deepening, you can see towering glacier everywhere. Finally, after passing a large glacier, a valley full of greenery with birds and flowers appeared in front of Duan Lingtian's trio. A valley, with the fragrance of birds and flowers, lush flowers and grass, a spring scene, but around this valley, there is a large area of glacier and snow, forming a very sharp contrast. Both Duan Lingtian and Tan Shouting couldn't help being a little surprised. Although even a strong who understands the law of life to the realm of small perfection can make a valley show this in the ice and snow, it consumes a lot of his own divine power. Even for the most powerful people who are generally good at the laws of life, I am afraid it is a bit difficult. Being able to build such a valley in the glacier and snowfield so freely, and this valley has obviously existed for a long time, showing the strength of the valley owner. When you two see this scene, are you guessing that my old friend is good at the law of life? Seeing Duan Lingtian and Tan Ziyuteng's shock, Han Wang asked with a smile. Tan Shouting nodded. As for Duan Lingtian, he also looked at King Han with a little bit of doubt in his eyes. Is not it? If not, is this scene supported by the tree of life in the strongest person? It's just that, in such an icy world, supporting such a place, even the sacred tree of life in the Xeon's body would consume a lot of money, right? There should be few Xeons who consume the power of the sacred tree of life in their bodies so extravagantly, right? You know, for the strongest, the abundant power of the sacred tree of life in the body can help them at a critical moment. My old friend is not good at the law of life, but the law of wood. When King Han spoke again, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The scene in front of him is constructed by the sacred tree of life in his body. It's me. It's impossible to act so extravagantly to let the tree of life in the body be like this. But he is different. Although his strength is not much stronger than mine. But the sacred tree of life in his body is the sacred tree of life left by the small world in the body of the once strong realm. For that sacred tree of life, this consumption is nothing at all. It can easily replenish it with one breath. As King Han's voice fell, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but tremble in his heart. The sacred tree of life left by the small world in the body of the strong world. Doesn't that mean that the tree of life left behind by a powerful real mist who died unexpectedly was obtained by the Deadwood Senior? You know, if it weren't accidentally perished, the sacred tree of life would have been wiped out together with the realm-level powerhouse under the tens of thousands of years of calamity. For those who are strong in the realm, standing outside the realm, and even the existence of the peak of the 10,000 realms, will they perish? The person who killed him was also a strong realm? If it is also a strong realm, at least a number of strong realm can be killed before he can be killed. The sacred tree of life. Was it the chance that Senior Witherwood got by accident, or was it his father, Senior Yuanhei's chance, which was given to his son after receiving it? At this moment, Duan Lingtian was shocked, and many imaginations and guesses appeared in his mind. Chapter 4461. The sacred tree of life in Witherwood was acquired by his father back then and was forcibly sent into the small world in his body. Witherwood's current strength, a large part of it, also comes from that powerful sacred tree of life. Han Yuqing, the Cold King, continued. The doubts in Duan Lingtian's heart were completely resolved at this moment. That Senior Witherwood is not only powerful in himself, but also has a more powerful father. The sacred tree of life left behind by the powerhouse of the worldly respected state can be obtained. This is not an ordinary opportunity, it can be said to be a great opportunity. You should know that those who can kill the strong of the realm are usually those above the realm. While killing the opponent, I must also want to get the sacred tree of life in the opponent's body. If you can't get it, it is usually the fallen realm-level powerhouse, letting the tree of life in the body drift with the flow in the spatial turbulence, and does not leave traces of the powerhouse who killed him. The life-sacred tree in the body of a realm powerhouse, once out of trouble, even if the strength is not as good as that of a realm powerhouse, it is not ordinary. Not to mention getting its approval, even if you want to find it, it is not an easy task. The fact that Deadwood can get that tree of life shows that he has been recognized by the tree of life. In addition, the tree of life came from his father, the super strong man named Yuenhe. One can imagine that the other party's methods are unusual. Senior Cold King, let me learn from the younger generation of such a strongest person. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a little helpless in his heart, and at the same time, he also thought that once they had discussed each other, even if their strength surpassed the opponent, he must keep more hands. Although you don't know the other person, it's better not to be guilty if you don't know the other person's background. Brother Deadwood, I'm here to disturb you again. Han Yuqing, the Cold King, looked at the valley like a paradise in the ice and snow ahead. Although his voice was not loud, he still clearly entered the valley. And within the valley, there was movement soon. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Under Duan Lingshan's eyes, strips of bald vines whizzed out from the valley. In the end, these thousands of vines entangled in the void, and finally turned into a figure. This was an old man with a thin body, wearing a loose grey robe, as if he could be blown down by a gust of wind, but his eyes were piercing, not like what an old man should have. Brother Yuqing, brother, I have been waiting for a long time. The old man laughed and said, last time you told me that you have found a genius and Evildor who is less than 10,000 years old, who can help me educate my impeccable great-great-great-great-grandson. You said this is the one next to you, right? After the words fell, the old man's eyes also fell on Duan Lingshan's body in an instant. At this moment, Duan Lingtian only felt that his body was stiff, as if at this moment, life and death were completely out of his control, and even felt a tremor from the heart. In an instant, Duan Lingtian felt the horror of this old man. Li Feng, I have seen Senior Withered Wood. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and took a step forward. In this step, the opportunity mobilized all his powers, his divine power was fully deployed, and the power of the law of space also exploded. At this moment, the fierce swordsmanship seemed to be the unity of humans and swords. One step forward, defeated the power carried by the old man's gaze. And the old man, the strongest person in the Pingxiong realm Withered Wood, at this time, his pupils suddenly contracted, and there was a tremor in his heart. Although the law of space has not yet reached the realm of small perfection, this kendo is really shocking. The bottom of the young man in front of him, in fact, had been informed by the Cold King Han Yuqing's not long ago. However, after learning that Gui knew, but he had no idea about the kendo mastered by a young man. At this moment, after seeing it with his own eyes, he realized that the kendo mastered by the opponent is indeed very powerful. At least, in the realm, it is more advanced than his father's mastery of devouring. It's hard to imagine that a young man who is less than 10,000 years old has reached this point in his experience in kendo. After the shock, Withered Wood came back to his senses, facing the polite Duan Lingtian, a smile that was uglier than crying squeezed out. Little friend Li Feng, I have known your extraordinary from my Yuqing brother. But to be honest, I only thought he was suffering. When I saw it today, I realized that he didn't exaggerate. You are indeed much better than my great-great-grandson. When Wither talked about it later, he couldn't help sighing, and at the same time he asked, little friend Li Feng, who can have such achievements at this age? I want to come from a different origin but I don't know, where is it from? And Duan Lingtian also said the previous statement again, Senior Wither Wood, I'm from 10,000 realms. Having said that, Duan Lingtian didn't say much. As for Deadwood, he didn't ask any more. He could see that the person in front of him obviously did not intend to say which realm of the 10,000 realms he came from. He wanted to have concerns, perhaps, he is an enemy who is worried about the forces behind him, and is staring at him in a place outside the realm. Bah! In this regard, Deadwood is also understandable. In the history of the Outer Lands, many geniuses of the 10,000 realms were killed and perished by the enemies of the forces behind them, but even so, the geniuses of the 10,000 realms could not stay within their own realm in order to go further. Working behind closed doors, only the genius who can withstand the wind and waves can finally become the supreme strong. Hu Fei Yan, I have seen Senior Witherwood, but haven't seen it for many years. Senior Witherwood still has the same style. At the same time, Hu Fei Yan, deputy commander of the Yangtian army, also saluted the Deadwood in a timely manner. When the Deadwood heard the sound, he noticed the other party, and smiled awkwardly. Just now I focused on little friend Li Feng, but I forgot you girl. I heard that brother Yuqing said that your foster father would let you go to the 3 holy realms. I still couldn't believe it. Now it seems that Hu Bugue, the kid, really figured it out. Hearing the words of Witherwood, Hu Feiyan's eyes flashed. Senior Witherwood said that my foster father figured it out? But I don't know, what does this mean? Witherwood heard the words, his face stagnated, as if inadvertently glanced at Han Yuqing, who was next to him, and shook his head and said, I mean, Hu Bugue, the kid, finally figured out that you should go to the 3 holy realms to take an adventure. In the past, he did not allow you to enter the 3 holy realms. He must be worried that your strength is not enough. If you rush into the 3 holy realms to experience, your life is in danger. Now that your strength is close to the invincible high-ranking god, you have entered the 3 holy realms, and you already have the power to protect yourself. After Deadwood finished speaking, he obviously didn't want to continue on this topic. He looked at Han Yuqing, the Cold King, and said, Brother Yuqing, you will rest here for a few days. My great-great-great-grandson, it is estimated that it will take some time before he can return. Almost, only 2 months, that's all. Duan Lingtian and his party lived in the valley under the arrangement of Deadwood. In the next 2 months, as the host, Witherwood was also very particular about it. He didn't let them wait in vain, and gave them a lot of guidance in cultivation. Although Witherwood is good at the laws of the wood system, the tree of life in his body was the tree of life for those in the realm in the past. With so much experience, even the father of Wither, the half-step realm venerable, I am afraid. It's incomparable. Therefore, both Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan felt that these 2 months had benefited a lot. It was Tan Xiuting, who was also touched by Duan Lingtian's light, and asked Wither Muse questions about repairing his face. With regard to Duan Lingtian's face, Wither Mu answered them one by one. In response to this, Tan Xiuting was excited, and when he looked at Duan Lingtian again, his eyes also showed a little more gratefulness. If so, before that, he had to be loyal to his young master just because of the comfort of the Sky Blood Oath. But now, I feel that it doesn't seem to be a bad thing to follow this young master for the time being. Not to mention that he hasn't encountered any major danger so far along the way. The gains in the past 2 months are enough to offset his millennium, or even thousands of years of painful enlightenment. Little friend Li Feng, the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of old brother Witherwood, is back. On this day, Duan Lingtian, who was closing his eyes and rested in the room, heard the voice of Han Yuqing in his ears. Han Yuqing's voice is extremely penetrating, directly penetrating the soundproofing formation he arranged, entering his ears, awakening him, and making him feel the horror of the strongest. With my current strength, if the strongest really wants to kill me, it is really as simple as killing a chicken and cutting grass. Duan Lingtian's heart was empty, but he was also a little helpless. Of course, more, or the desire to become stronger in the heart is stronger. This discussion is about to come after all. Duan Lingtian knew that the return of the great-great-grandson of Senior Wither would also meant that the discussion between him and the other party was about to take place. Chapter 4462. Before heading to the 3 holy realms, what Duan Lingtian was waiting to do was to learn from the great-grandson of the strongest Deadwood. According to the words of Witherwood and Hanwang, the other party is proud and dissatisfied with anyone, including Witherwood, and feels that they have no achievements at their own age, and feel that what they can achieve in the future will inevitably surpass them. To be honest, before seeing the great-great-grandson of Withered Wood, Duan Lingtian had guessed that the other party was a figure with an over-the-top eye, and felt that it was hard to find a rival among his peers. He didn't agree with anyone around him, because those people at his age hadn't achieved what he did. Of course, he has also heard that in those 3 holy realms, and even in the 10,000 realms, there are some top geniuses, who are less than long-lived, and have the strength close to the invincible upper gods, stronger than he. But I heard it was after all. Because Deadwood didn't intend to let him enter the 3 holy realms too early to experience, so even if he wanted to meet people who were more talented than him, he didn't have a chance. In this case, he even felt that what he heard may not be true. Many rumors will be exaggerated after they spread. You are the one, Xianzhu said, someone who is less than 10,000 years old and is stronger than me. Wearing a dark cyan robe, tall, with a handsome face with a cool youth, after paying respects to the cold king Han Yuqing, he looked at Duan Lingtian who was following the cold king. At the same time, Duan Lingtian only felt that a wave of divine consciousness was swept away. Although it was only the divine consciousness of the upper gods, he could resist the opponent with divine knowledge, but he did not do that. Because he knew that this was the age the other party was investigating, and the age under Long Live could easily be confirmed by God's sense. Long Live, in 10,000 realms, and even places outside the realms, is a watershed. Long live enough, fellow practitioners can find out through divine consciousness. But if it is a person whose cultivation level is not at the same level, a person with a high cultivation level, even without divine knowledge, they can vaguely sense the other person's whether the age is more than Long Live. It's really not Long Live. The youth nodded to Duan Lingtian, and then smiled contemptuously. I believe it if you are less than Long Live. But if you say that you are better than me, I don't believe it. He Luo. At this moment, the long overdue Deadwood frowned slightly and looked at the youth, and shouted. After the youth reduced the contemptuous smile on his face, Witheredwood looked at Duan Lingtian and smiled apologetically. Little friend Li Feng, my great-great-grandson is spoiled by me, and I hope I don't have common knowledge with him. Senior Witheredwood joked. Duan Lingtian smiled slightly. A short-sighted person like Ling Sun, I don't know how many I have seen when I walk along this road, so I'm not surprised. Short-sighted. Duan Lingtian's description immediately made the dead great-great-grandson He Luo angry. Li Feng, how dare you say that I am short-sighted? You and me, I planned to finish the order, but now, I have changed my mind. If I don't teach you some lessons, I will be a descendant of the strongest in vain. Between He Luo's eyes, anger was raging. If the person in front of him had not come with King Han, he would have liked to kill the opponent and soon. How dare to humiliate him like this? In He Luo's eyes, the words of the person in front of him were humiliating him. Then I am looking forward to it very much. Duan Lingtian smiled faintly. I heard Senior Han Wang said, you just came back from outside, but you have to rest for a while before you can discuss with me. Although Duan Lingtian was anxious to solve the matter at hand and desperately wanted to go to the 3 holy realms as soon as possible, he did not intend to take advantage of the person in front of him. Since the other party had just returned from the outside, then he gave the other party time to rest and prepare. Need not. He Luo sneered, I came back from the outside and sat in a magical spaceship. I never consumed my powers myself. Maybe I haven't used them for a long time. As the words fell, He Luo's eyes burst into a strong sense of war. And Duan Lingtian, following the voice of He Luo, nodded, if this is the case, it is just what I want. Seeing the 2 young men battling their swords, King Han and Witheredwood, the 2 most powerful men, looked at each other and communicated with each other via voice transmission. Brother Witheredwood, you great-great-grandson are like this, I'm afraid you will suffer some hardship. Don't worry, I will tell Li Feng's little friend, let him stay a little bit, so that he won't lose too badly. Brother Yuqing, it doesn't need to be like this. On the side of Withered Wood, it was the first time to stop King Han. He Luo, the child, now needs a frustration that convinces him. With me, his life will not be in danger. You let Li Feng little friends don't need to keep their hands, try their best to shoot, the sooner you beat him, the better. I will also ask him to do his best, don't underestimate little friend Li Feng. If little friend Li Feng can defeat him within 10 breaths, I originally intended to give him the reward, I will double it to him. Withered Wood said solemnly. When King Han heard the words of Withered Wood, he also felt the other party's hate iron cannot become steel, and immediately relayed the words of Withered Wood to Duan Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. Earlier, Wither had promised that after he defeated He Luo, he would give him an invincible high-ranking ***** who is good at the law of time to shoot the floating shadow orb. Withered Wood wanted to give him the floating shadow beads that the invincible high-ranking gods who were good at the law of space would shoot, but he didn't have it in his hands. However, for Duan Lingtian, even the floating shadow orb shot by the invincible high-ranking ***** who is good at the law of time is the treasure he desperately want. Within 10 breaths, defeating Haluor, can you get 2 such floating shadow beads? I just don't know. Senior Witherwood will also give me a floating shadow orb that the invincible high-ranking *****, who is good at what kind of rules will shoot. Because the remuneration given by Withered Wood is too important to him, even if Duan Lingtian feels that the reward given by the other party is too precious, there is no way to refuse it. Of course, in his heart, he still inherits the favor of Wither Wood. If there is a chance in the future, he will definitely repay with Wood's gift of pearls. Now, he can certainly refuse, but that is tantamount to a shortcut to self-determination and slowing down his path to becoming stronger. He can't do this kind of thing. Now he becomes stronger not only for himself, but also for his wife, Kerr, as well as family and friend. After he came to the place outside the realm, he knew that this world is so big that if one day, if the gods were to suffer a catastrophe, and if a strong person above the realm took action, the creatures in the realm of the gods might not be able to resist. Got it. Although his current strength is insignificant from the outside world, and even the 10,000 worlds, there is still a sense of crisis. After all, the God realm is not one of the 3 strongest realms in the 10,000 realms. It's just one of the strongest 18 realms under the 3 realms. After arriving in places outside the realm, he also heard that many realms that were not weaker than the God realm once were destroyed because of some changes and annihilated in the long river of history. And the creatures in the realm of that side, basically only the strongest and the closest relatives of those strongest ones, survived. Over the glacier and snow, there was a bitter cold wind. Duan Lingtian and Haluor stood facing each other. Both of them were young talents, their robes turbulent with the wind, and when they faced each other far away, their eyes became more and more fierce. You'd better not keep your hands, lest you won't be convinced of defeat. Duan Lingtian looked at each other calmly, and said without rush, after this match, I am not interested in the second match with you. End of this chapter. Chapter 4463. Don't worry, I can't keep my hands. Haluor raised his brows and smiled coldly. Although I don't think how strong you can be, since Xuanzu has spoken, I won't underestimate you. Heluo could not believe what others said. However, it is impossible for him not to believe the words of his Xuanzu. It's just that the person in front of him is too young, and because he is also no more than long live, he can clearly feel that the age of the other party seems to be much younger than him. Generally, only people who are 3,000 or 4,000 years younger than him will give him this feeling. And now, he feels this way. In other words, the other party, the probability is only about 5,000 years old. Is a person around 5,000 years old more powerful than him? Is it possible? He thought it was impossible. If it weren't for his Xuanzu saying that the opponent is very strong, it might be better than him, then another person would say that he would have started to mock him with disdain. About 5,000 years old, want to beat me? Idiot talk about dreams. In Heluo's view, looking beyond the realms, and even the 10,000 realms, there may be people who are also less than 10,000 years old than him, but the opponent's age must be basically the same as him. Even if he is younger, it is impossible to be much younger. Boom. As the air around Haluor shook, a series of terrifying black power swept up. This black power was exactly what Heluo's divine power combined with the law of death showed. Haluor at the moment before looked very normal, just like a young master Pian Pianjia. In this moment, Heluo's temperament changed drastically, as if he had become an Azura under the 9 netherworlds. His body was entwined with deathly aura, his eyes also began to glow with blood red, and the whole person looked murderous. The gentleness just now is completely 2 extremes. Cool. In Heluo's hand, a knife quickly appeared, a knife that looked extremely narrow but somewhat curved, with a cold luster gleaming on it, and the breath extending from it also declared that it was a knife. Xeon artifact. As the great-great-grandson of the strongest, Haluor naturally cannot lack the strongest artifact in his hands. When Haluor was ready to go, Withered Wood, King Han, Hu Fei Yan, and Tan Xiuteng, who followed Hu Feiyan, left Heluo in unison, and landed on the purple figure opposite Heluo. At this moment, Duan Lingtian dressed in purple, with the colorful lightsaber in his hand raging, the surrounding space began to vibrate violently at this moment, and even as the grey power swept, the surrounding void appeared subtle cracks in the space. In addition, a sharp sword intent also soared from Duan Lingtian's body at this moment. At this moment, Duan Lingtian stood holding the sword, and the whole person seemed to have turned into a sharp sword about to be unsheathed, with sword energy rushing into the sky. Kendo. Opposite, Heluo originally discovered that Duan Lingtian's law of space hadn't even stepped into the realm of small perfection, and the contempt that arose in his heart, at this moment, it disappeared. And his face became extremely dignified at this moment. The opponent has mastered Kendo. Moreover, it is a very strong Kendo. This Kendo gave him a very strong sense of oppression. Although he also mastered one of the 4 realms of heaven and earth many years ago, it was only a rudimentary form. Although he could help a certain amount in his shots, it was minimal compared to his own strength. At this moment, in front of the opponent's swordsmanship, he subconsciously wanted to push the prototype of his swordsmanship, but found that the prototype of the swordsmanship just stretched out, and it collapsed like a frightened child. This also shocked Heluo's heart, realizing the strength of the opponent's swordsmanship, and before even confronting him, he shocked the prototype of his swordsmanship far away. This is the oppression of the realm of the way of weapons. It is said that this can only be achieved if the realm is extremely different. How old is he? How old is he in Kendo? Could it be he got the true biography of the Jiezun realm powerhouse? Inheritance, even if it is the inheritance of the realm strong, is divided into 3 or 6 or 9 grades. Only the true transmission of the strong realm can make a person soar into the sky. But now, seeing Duan Lingtian, who had mastered this terrifying situation in Kendo, Heluo couldn't help but guess like this. Humph. However, even though he was horrified by Duan Lingtian's swordsmanship, Heluo was not discouraged. In his opinion, although the opponent's swordsmanship was strong, the realm of the law of space was also placed there, and his comprehensive strength might not be as good as him. Of course, at this moment, the only trace of ignorance in his heart for the person in front of him is completely gone. This person is indeed a formidable opponent. Hum. A crisp sound of a knife, like a phoenix sound passed from above the 9 heavens, resounded in all directions, shaking the heavens and the earth, and a long and narrow spatial crack appeared in the void. The knife in Heluo's hand moved. After the knife was moved, the space was torn apart, and all the dead air in the sky gathered in the knife in his hand, whistling towards Duan Lingtian, as if he was about to split Duan Lingtian in half. This knife came very quickly. Moreover, at the moment the knife was released, around Duan Lingtian's body, there were also pieces of death, full of oppression, as if appearing out of thin air, and once appeared, it bound Duan Lingtian, as if forcing Duan Lingtian to resist Heluo's knife. Good means. Duan Lingtian was surprised. The other party's lifelessness continued to sweep the oppression, and even caused the surrounding space to tremble, extremely unstable. At this moment, he couldn't teleport at all. The teleportation of the law of space needs to be performed in a calm space. The general law of death is not enough to affect teleportation, but the law of death that has entered the state of small perfection, and even other laws of the state of small perfection, but it is enough to shock the space, affecting the cultivators who are good at the laws of space to teleport. And saw the scene before me. Not far away, Han Yuqing, the Cold King, looked at Witherwood in surprise and said, "Brother Witherwood, your great-great-grandson's law of death has improved compared with the last time. Look at this posture. As long as his death the law goes one step further, or the rudimentary form of the sword path transforms into a real sword path, and his strength has stepped into the level off-close to the invincible high-ranking god." When the voice fell, Han Yuqing saw the astonishment on Withered Wood's face and looked at the unresponsive Withered Wood. He couldn't help but feel shocked. Is it possible? This improvement in Heluo's law of death does not even older Withered Wood know? Did you break through this time? Han Yuqing, indeed guessed right. The improvement of Heluo's law of death was indeed a breakthrough outside this time, so that Deadwood didn't know it, and now that I saw it with my own eyes, Deadwood was also shocked. This kid. A smile appeared on Withered Wood's face, his strength is even further, so little friend Li Feng, who wants to defeat him within 10 breaths, I am afraid it is impossible. People who are close to the invincible high-ranking gods may be able to defeat the current Haluor within 10 breaths. But there are definitely not many, not more than half. And Withered Wood obviously did not think that the purple-clothed youth in front of him would be that half. After all, the opponent is not long live now. And as far as he knows, the place outside the world, and even the present age of the 10,000 realms, is less than long live the existence of the invincible high-ranking gods, who can enter the half of the people, absolutely few. He had heard of all those people, and there was no purple-clothed youth in front of him. Space imprisoned. In the field, facing Heluo's preemptive strike, and then aware of the constraints around him, Duan Lingtian also knew that the best choice he could make now was by no means to get out of trouble. Once he gets out of trouble, Heluo's menacing stab will inevitably make him impossible to hide. Although he is 100% sure to get out of trouble, it also takes a certain amount of time. Therefore, at this moment, he directly chose to use the principle of space imprisonment to resist the death force from the constant pressure around him, and then the space around him calmed down. It was at this moment that he was able to teleport away with confidence. Teleport. Within a single thought, Duan Lingtian disappeared into the encirclement of Haluor, and the appearance of space constraints gave him the opportunity to teleport, and he successfully teleported and escaped from Heluo's encirclement. Chapter 4464. For Heluo's attack, he wanted to hit, relying on the law of death's restraint on Duan Lingtian. But now, Duan Lingtian smoothly broke his shackles and flees far away. It is almost impossible for him to make a hit with this blow. The sharp and unmatched blade light descended from the void, as if opening up the sky, cutting a towering glacier into 2 halves, and the upper half of the glacier crashed down, the ice and snow shook the ground, and an avalanche followed. The disaster is coming, just like the end. This also shows how powerful Haluor is. Even in the void, a tiny spatial crack was constantly swaying, and it took a long time to close. Use the power of your blood. Duan Lingtian's indifferent words spread in the void, but no one else was seen. If you have this strength and don't make 3 moves, I will defeat you. Duan Lingtian's tone was indifferent. Listening to Heluo's ears suddenly made de Heluo's expression gloomy. What a big tone. Since you want to see the power of my bloodline, let you see and see. As the voice fell, Heluo's blood rose, and finally turned into a humanoid blood shadow, shrinking into Heluo's body, making de Heluo's aura stronger. At the same time, the humanoid blood shadow appeared in Heluo's body, as if possessed by Heluo's body. At this moment, the knife in Heluo's hand and the light bursting from it were also stained with a layer of blood, as if the power was even more infinite. At this moment, even if an ordinary person was on the scene, he could vaguely perceive the improvement of Heluo's strength in this instant, which was a whole level higher than before. The current Haluor has completely put away the heart of contempt that is not much deep in his heart. Although he said the other party's good tone, in fact, Haluor recognized the opponent's strength in his heart. If he were not strong, how could he break free from his death bondage? You know, that trick can't be used by anyone who is good at the law of death. Even if it is other people who understand the law of death to the realm of small perfection, more than 90% of people can't perform that trick. He was able to perform that move entirely because it was a move tailored for him by his profound ancestor, the strongest Wither Wood. With this move, some of the realm of cultivation is comparable to his realm. People are easily defeated by him. But the Li Feng in front of him got rid of that trick in a short time, which shows that his is not easy. The most important is, Li Feng got rid of that trick, never used the power of his bloodline, nor did he use the law to clone himself. In other words, Li Feng, there is still more. Under such circumstances, how dare he be careless? Do you think, if you hide, I can't find you? Suddenly, Heluo's eyes flashed, and the moment the extended sense of consciousness returned to the opponent's position, he stood up with the knife in his hand. The knife in his hand seemed to have been given life by him, and he swung it out and brought it up. A sharp blade of light swept to the horizon. The blade light passed by, and a figure also appeared from there, but it was a teleportation that avoided Heluo's offensive, and then slammed towards Haluor with the sword. Wrong. And just when Haluor was about to fight against the person who showed up, suddenly, he discovered something was wrong. Although the person in front of him looked exactly like that Li Feng, even the sword in his hand was shining colorfully, but he was obviously less vigorous. What he is good at is the law of death, and the law of death emphasizes life toward death, so he is extremely sensitive to vitality. Ordinary people, in this rush, may not be able to detect the abnormality of the opponent. However, he found out. It's his law clone. In an instant, Haluor had a count in his heart, and when he drew a sword Mang Om to kill the opponent in front of him, he quickly evacuated the place. Call out. But at the moment Haluor evacuated, another figure appeared, appearing in the place where Haluor was at the moment, and at the same time a grey sword light broke through the air, causing the space to tremble and crack. But it was Duan Lingshan's deity. While the law clone attracted Heluo's attention, he teleported to Heluo's side and shot Haluor. However, because Haluor reacted quickly, he avoided it first. This prejudgment also made the eyes of the two strongest players watching the battle shine brightly. As for the other two people, Hu Feiyan and Tan Xiuting, they all showed shock on their faces, subconsciously squeezing a cold sweat for Haluor. Especially Tan Xiuting. If it is him, it is absolutely impossible to react. I thought that even if my strength is not as good as the young master and deputy army leader who are close to the invincible high-ranking gods, but the descendants of this strongest person are still comparable. But judging from the current methods displayed by the opponent, if I compare he fights against him, fearing that he will not be able to hold dozens of moves. At this moment, Tan Xiuting couldn't help but feel a little lost. In the past, when he was still in the heavenly sand realm, he was also called a genius by many people, and he has always been proud of it. And now, after seeing the enchantment of his own young master, and then seeing another such powerful existence, it is not long live, he feels that in front of the two, he is completely indifferent to the word genius. Heluo's reaction is really fast. In such a short time, he judged that the little friend Li Feng who appeared first was just a law clone, and, in time, he avoided the thunderous blow
When
of Li
Deadwood
Feng's
heard the
deity.
words,
He
King
said with
Han
a
looked
faint
at the
smile.
dead wood,
Halo was
slightly
able to respond
surprised.
in time. I am afraid that it is thanks to the law of death that he is good at. Only if he is good at the law of death, can he be aware of the lack of Li Feng's law at the first time. With vitality and anger, to judge that it is just a clone of the law. If what he is good at is not the law of death, I am afraid that he will be injured at least a little by the blow of little friend Li Feng. Although his mouth is modest, but with his shiny eyes, it is not difficult to see how happy he is now. Of course, he couldn't help but marvel at the strength displayed by the young man named Li Feng. A young man no older than his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson was so powerful that he was simply the enchanting Avildor. Brother Withered Wood, judging from the current situation. Haluor, it really may not be able to survive 10 tricks under Li Feng's hand. Seeing the two confronting again in the field, King Han shook his head and said, since Duan Lingtian shot down the air just now, he has joined forces with the deity and the law clone to kill Haluor head-on, and completely suppressed Haluor, making de Haluor fall into a disadvantage after 2 moves. The gap is too big. The pleasant color in Witherwood's eyes disappeared at this time, and it was replaced by shock. It was at this moment that he saw the real strength of the Li Feng in front of him. Just now, the other party didn't confront his great-great-great-grandson Haluor, he still didn't feel anything. Now, under the head-to-head confrontation, the judgment is made. His swordsmanship is too powerful. Now in the outer world, even the 10,000 realms, under the realm of the superior realm, I really don't know any strongest person who is good at kendo, who can have this accomplishment in kendo. Withered Wood sighed. Hearing the words of Wither Wood, King Han nodded his head with deep conviction. Outside the realm, and even in the contemporary world, it is difficult to find someone who can compare with him in the sword. In my impression, in modern times, under the realm of Jiezun, there should be only the time sword that came out of the God realm, one of the 18 realms among the 10,000 realms, whose attainments in kendo can be higher than him. Time sword. As soon as King Han said this, Withered Wood looked solemn. Time sword, that was a genius in the same era as his father, and like his father, he was a half-step world Zun. Even his father was once defeated by the opponent. It's a pity that at that time, The lightsaber offended the realm powerhouse in the early years, and fell, or else, now, maybe they are already the realm powerhouse. And 100% is a realm expert who breaks through with swordsmanship. Because, according to his father, the time sword's talent in the law of time has priority. After stepping into the small perfect state, he will step on the spot, and then enter the inch. It is completely dependent on the powerful kendo to have a half-step world. Strength. If he didn't use kendo, his strength would at best be comparable to that of the most powerful person in the outside world, or even the bottom of the 10,000 realms. Time sword, when he is in, let alone below the realm of Jezun, he is above the realm of Jezun, and few people can compete with him in the sword doctrine, right? Withered Wood sighed again. If Duan Lingtian heard the conversation between Wither Wood and King Han, he would definitely be shocked. Of course he was not shocked by the time sword, but shocked that his hometown, God Realm, had such a kendo evil. And if Duan Lingshan's master Wind Qingyang is here, and hearing the dialogue between the two, he will definitely react immediately. The time sword is the master of the inheritance of the strongest he has obtained. The time sword is his master. Regarding seniority, the time sword is Duan Lingshan's master. Of course, the current Duan Lingtian, even if he hears the dialogue between the two, it is impossible to sort out the relationship. Because, even if he knew that there was a time sword in the gods, he didn't know that his master Feng Qingyang had obtained the inheritance of the time sword. He lost. Not far away, Hu Feiyan shook his head and murmured as he watched the two competing in the field. And almost at the moment when her voice fell, a loud bang sound spread across the ice and snow, but Haluor was crushed down by Duan Lingtian with the force of the sword body, and the whole person slammed on the glacier, making the glacier instantaneous. A huge bottomless crater appeared, and water under the thick glacier also poured up in a flash. As for Haluor, he was completely gone. Until a moment later, the declining figure of Heluo's breath broke through the water, his face was pale, his eyes were blank, his pale lips twitched slightly. Why, how could such a big gap? He is so much younger than me. How can it be? How can this be? Now Haluor, although apparently unscathed on the surface, his mental state seems to be a little broken. It is not difficult to see that his mentality has completely collapsed. Chapter 4465. Haluor is undoubtedly the pride of heaven. Since he was born, he hasn't needed to travel for cultivation resources and cultivation environment, because he has a profound ancestor of the strongest, and above it, there is an ancestor of half-step world respect. A pair of Zeons, and they are all top Zeons. The talent and savvy of Heluo's line can be imagined. As their descendants, it is naturally impossible for Haluor to be inferior. Since Heluo's practice, not to mention his peers, even people who are much older than him, basically have no rivals. Therefore, his sense of superiority skyrocketed. This time, even if his Xuanzu told him that he might not be the opponent of the same age brought by King Han, he did not take it seriously, especially after he discovered that the opponent was at least 2,000 or 3,000 years old. The opponent cannot be his opponent. And now, after he has made a breakthrough recently, shot with all his strength, without any reservations, he is still defeated by the opponent. Lost in the hands of a young man several thousand years younger than him. In the eyes of others, he is a young man, but in his eyes, the person in front of him is also a young man. In some secular places in the world, with a gap of several thousand years, he can be the ancestor of the other party. How can it be? Because of this, Heluo's mentality completely collapsed. If he is the same age, he would not be so. Therefore, in his current state, even if it was King Han, or even his profound ancestor Withered Wood, he was a little confused, and he did not expect his psychological endurance to be so bad. Brother Withered Wood. This time the failure seemed to have hit him a bit harder. It was beyond our imagination, King Han said to Withered Wood with a solemn expression. And Wither Wood frowned slightly at this time. It stands to reason that even if his great-great-grandson is defeated by his peers, it shouldn't be the case. How can you go out once, while your strength has improved, but your psychological endurance has become so bad? Whether it is the Cold King or the Dead Wood, they never expected. The reason why Haluor is like this is not because he was so easily defeated by his peers, but because he was defeated by a man several thousand years younger than himself. He is now defeated by the opponent. If he is the other party's age, the other party can crush him to death with just one finger. This kind of blow, for Haluor, who has been going smoothly, is tantamount to murder. Cool. On the other side, Hu Feiyan flashed away and reached Duan Lingshan's side, and together with Duan Lingtian, he looked at the desperate Haluor. Li Feng, it seems that your defeating him will hit him a lot. Won't he be devastated, will he? If so, you would completely offend Senior Witherwood. Hu Feiyan said to Duan Lingtian. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he responded indifferently. This discussion was not initiated by me. Why am I wrong? Even if Senior Witherwood is to blame, I am afraid he can only blame him for agreeing to Senior Han's suggestion, right? Even if you don't blame him, you should blame Senior Han Wang, not me. I also obeyed the arrangements of Senior Han King to discuss with this Haluor. If Senior Han hadn't spoken, I would never have known him, let alone learn from him. Duan Lingtian didn't care about Hu Feiyan's words at all, and didn't think he would do anything about it. The strongest have to face. In particular, he could see that the relationship between King Han and Witherwood was very good, otherwise King Han wouldn't have spent a lot of money to ask him to take action in order to help Witherwood experience the younger generation. This Haluor. Duan Lingshan's gaze fell on Haluor, and he shook his head slightly. The reason why he is like this now, I am afraid that more often I found out that I am a lot younger than him. If his peers beat him, he shouldn't be like that. Duan Lingtian also guessed this point. It is difficult for a person over long live to accurately sense his specific age, but a person under long live can still vaguely detect how old he is. Long live, it is a watershed. If Haluor today exceeds long live, it is impossible to detect how old he is. This discussion ended in such a sloppy way. After the discussion, Witherwood intends to awaken Haluor, but Haluor has always been lost, as if he really lost his soul. Witherwood's face became more and more ugly. At this time, King Han also asked Duan Lingtian to go back first, and at the same time said to Duan Lingtian in a voice transmission, "Little friend Li Feng, old brother Wither told me just now, no matter what the result of this discussion is, even if his great-great-grandson degenerates and abolishes it. And he won't anger you. In addition, he won't repent if he promises your reward. However, he is going to find his father Yuanhe Sr. to get one of the soul orbs, so you may have to wait a few days." Hearing King Han's words, Duan Lingtian nodded, then turned and left and went back. Seeing Duan Lingshan's departure, Hu Feiyan also shook his head, and then left. It doesn't make sense to stay now, and it may even prevent Witherwood, the strongest, being able to step down. After all, his younger generation is like this, it is not a glorious thing. As for Tan Xiuting, he also turned and left as soon as Duan Lingtian turned around. However, he was not idle. Repeatedly voice transmission admired Duan Lingtian, "Master, your strength is too strong. Looking at the existence of the invincible high-ranking deity, your strength may also be among the best." Tan Xiuting knew that even if they were both close to the invincible high-ranking gods, their strength was divided into strengths and weaknesses. The strongest, defeating, and even killing the weakest, although there is a certain degree of difficulty, it is not impossible to achieve. That Haluor is also strong. His cultivation base is actually not much worse than mine, but his methods make me unable to cope with it. Speaking of later, Tan Xiuteng's eyes could not help but show envy and jealousy. He believed that if he had a background like Haluor, even if he had not become the invincible high-ranking deity or the strongest, he would definitely be close to the top existence of the invincible high-ranking deity. Li Feng. A voice came from behind, but Hu Feiyan followed. "Your purpose here is also achieved. When do you plan to set off for the 3 holy realms?" The 3 holy places. That is Hu Feiyan's destination. At the same time, it is also Duan Lingshan's destination. Originally, Hu Feiyan planned to go to the 3 holy realms by herself. At that time, she didn't know that Duan Lingtian would also go to the 3 holy realms. After knowing that Duan Lingtian would also go to the 3 holy realms, she began to think about walking with Duan Lingtian, and King Han also spoke in person, hoping that Duan Lingtian could take care of Hu Feiyan 1 or 2 in the 3 holy realms. In this regard, Duan Lingtian also agreed. If it was a useless oil bottle, he would definitely dislike it. After all, it's not a relative, but Hu Feiyan is not. Her strength is not much weaker than him. To him, the three holy realms were also full of unimaginable dangers in mystery. If there is an existence like Hu Feiyan who is close to the invincible high-ranking deity, in the three holy realms, they can also care for each other and increase the chance of survival. If Hu Feiyan went to the three holy realms alone, he would not come here with him. It is precisely because I planned to go with Duan Lingtian, so I came here together. In a few days, when we leave, I will call you. Duan Lingtian said to Hu Feiyan. Before setting off, he had to wait for the 2 soul orbs promised by the Deadwood Senior to get his hands. Once those 2 soul orbs get his hands, his time law will also usher in an opportunity to advance by leaps and bounds. At that time, his strength will be further strengthened. Going a step further, even if it is outside the realm of sight, or even in the 10,000 realms, a group of existences close to the invincible high-ranking gods, he dare to say that he is not afraid of anyone. It's really then. The invincible high-ranking gods can't come out, the strongest ones can't come out, he will be able to walk sideways. Certainly. At that time, his next step will also be to sprint to the invincible high-ranking deity. The law of space and the law of time, with the floating shadow mirror shot by the invincible upper gods as a reference, should be able to step into the realm of small perfection soon. The 2 laws go hand in hand. If you step into the realm of small perfection, even if you encounter an invincible high-ranking god, I may not be invincible. The current Duan Lingtian, whether it is the law of time or the law of space, has not yet stepped into the realm of small perfection. The reason why he has the current strength lies in the powerful kendo he has mastered. If the 2 great laws step into the realm of small perfection, at that time, he feels that his strength will definitely not be weaker than those invincible high-ranking god. Chapter 4466. In the next few days, Duan Lingtian was actually waiting for the remuneration promised by Deadwood to arrive, and when the reward was received, it would also be time for him to leave. As for whether Na Haluor can emerge from the shadow of being defeated by him, it is not what he needs to consider. If he can come out, this battle between him and Haluor will be a turning point for Haluor. In the future, Haluor's upper limit will be even higher, and if he can't get out, Haluor, a genius, may just fall into ruin and be in a state of despair. On Witherwood, he didn't need to worry that the other party would make trouble for him. After all, Witherwood himself supported this match, and even the reason why King Han wanted him to compete with Haluor was because of the words of Witherwood in the past. Withered would once sighed in front of King Han, if there could be a genius powerhouse who was less than 10,000 years old and defeated his great-great-grandson Haluor, perhaps Haluor would no longer be so complacent. This was also what King Han told Duan Lingtian 2 days ago, and the purpose was to make Duan Lingtian not worry that Deadwood would retaliate against him after Haluor fell. In the final analysis, the origin of this incident is still in Withered Wood himself. That boy Haluor, he hasn't fully woken up yet. On this day, Duan Lingtian's side once again ushered in the visit of King Han, however, looking at him, it is obviously much better. It is only a matter of time before I want to come and fully recover. The 2 soul orbs promised by Brother Withered Wood are here. You keep it. Brother Witherwood said, he still has to stare at Haluor, so he won't send you off. Obviously, Withered Wood also knew that Duan Lingtian would leave directly after getting the floating shadow orb. Senior Cold King, after I leave, I hope you can thank Senior Witherwood for me. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up after the floating shadow pearl got his hands, and then he politely said to King Han, I will keep this favor in my heart. If I have a chance in the future, I will return this favor to Senior Witherwood. Regardless of whether it was King Han or Withered Wood, for a discussion between him and Haluor, he actually took out the floating shadow beads that recorded the mirror image of the invincible upper gods, which can be said to be a gift to him. For him, the discussion with Haluor is just a matter of effort. I took a big advantage. And he, even though he knew it was a big deal, but he couldn't refuse it, because he really needed something from King Cold and Withered Wood. Okay, I'll tell old brother Deadwood. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, King Han glanced at him approvingly and nodded. Even if he is the strongest, the floating shadow beads shot by the invincible upper gods are also rare treasures for him. If they are given to the youth in front of them, it is naturally impossible for him not to know that he has suffered a great loss. But in this case, he still did it, and the reason was entirely because he wanted to invest in the other party. The other party is too enchanting. As long as you don't die halfway, the future is boundless. He also knew that his old friend Withered would had the same thoughts as him, and wanted to make good friends with the youth in front of him in advance. In addition, the next moment, King Han glanced in a direction on the left, where Hu Feiyan took a temporary rest. You and Feiyan will go to the 3 holy realms together. I hope you can take more care of her. Although she is older than you, great, but I can see that her experience is far inferior to yours. Besides, if you don't go to brother, you will also accept your love. King Han said. Duan Lingtian smiled slightly when he heard the words. Since we plan to go with Deputy Army Chief Hu, it is reasonable for us to help each other. This point, Senior Han Wang can rest assured. With your words, I am relieved. King Han nodded, and then added another sentence. When you leave, I won't see you off. However, when the time comes, you will still say hello to me. Good. Duan Lingtian complied. After the cold king left, he couldn't wait to return to his temporary foothold, and merged his divine consciousness into the 2 floating shadow beads handed over by the cold king to the dead wood. One of the floating shadow beads is the one that records the floating shadow mirror images shot by the invincible upper gods who are good at the law of time, which makes his breathing heavier. Another floating shadow orb, the invincible high-ranking ***** who shot in it. I don't know what kind of law it is good at. With this curiosity, Duan Lingtian began to observe the mirror image of the floating shadow recorded in another floating shadow bead. Soon, his breathing became quicker again. It turned out to be a floating shadow mirror shot by an invincible upper ***** who is good at the law of life. Amazing. Moreover, his opponent is actually an invincible high-ranking god, another invincible high-ranking god, who is good at the law of fire. At this moment, Duan Lingtian himself felt that his luck was a bit outrageous. Because of the existence of the sacred tree of life in his body, his attainments in the laws of life are only lower than the laws of space and time. And under the law of life, it is the law of fire. With these 2 floating shadow beads, my law of fire and law of life can also be improved in a short time. At that time, the law of life clone and the law of fire clone will be able to provide me with a great help. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed more and more, like 2 bright stars in the night sky, dazzling. On the second day, Duan Lingtian contacted Hu Feiyan and prepared to leave together. Hu Feiyan had already been waiting for Duan Lingtian's news. Hearing Duan Lingtian said he was leaving, he immediately came over to find Duan Lingtian. Tan Xiuteng, staying near Duan Lingtian's temporary foothold, naturally followed Duan Lingtian and Hu Feiyan and left together, leaving this icy and snowy world not long after. Before leaving, Duan Lingtian greeted King Han. At the same time when the 3 of them left, King Han, who received Duan Lingtian's greeting, also said to the old man in front of him, "Little friends Li Feng, they just left." The old man is not someone else, but dead wood. At this moment, King Han was playing chess with the old man, and there was a person standing behind the old man. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would be able to recognize him at a glance. This person was Heluo. At this time, Heluo had obviously recovered completely. Standing there, he, who was originally calm, suddenly contracted his pupils involuntarily when he heard the word Li Feng. "Brother Yu Qingshan, you and I underestimated the little friend Li Feng." Withered Wood sighed and sighed. "Yeah, we all underestimated him." King Han also nodded, and at the same time he glanced at Heluo behind Withered Wood. "If Heluo hadn't told you, I'm afraid it would be impossible for you or me to dream that he was only about 5,000 years old at most." About 5,000 years old, there is a hard power close to the invincible high-ranking god. It's not just the land outside the realm, but the upper 3 realms in the 10,000 realms. I have never heard of such evilders. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.